Oh, yeah.
Yes, it has.
Thanks, Leona.
Okay, yep, there's a message up. Okay, any declarations of interest, colleagues? No, thank you. Okay, moving on then to item 3 on the agenda, and the paper in terms of land for sale at 48 to 56 Main Street, Neilson. This was a report that was brought previously to Cabinet, where the shopkeepers were looking at possibly disposing of the site back to the council, which is utilised as a car park. Following consultation and some ongoing work, they clearly have decided that they don't want to proceed with that at the present time. So the paper really is just for noting and approving that the proposal for the addition, I'm looking at the wrong paper, is really just for noting the circumstances that the shopkeepers' collective rejection of the proposal in conjunction with the previous paper, and accept that as the outcome. There's, I don't think, any really more on that paper. I'd be happy to note that outcome and accept that the shopkeepers have had the opportunity and have decided to decline. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Item 4 on the agenda is the Scottish Government COVID business support, the local authority discretionary fund. And I assume that will either be Phil or Andy, or is Michael here?
No, I'll take that, Councillor Buchanan. This paper details and explains that the Scottish Government have made various funds available during the COVID crisis to small businesses and the self-employed. And there are a variety of funds, and each of these funds has a criteria which is normally targeted at a specific group or sector of the economy. And in that regard, as a council, we have distributed over £17 million worth of grants to small businesses and the self-employed in the last 14 months, which obviously is a great achievement. But in addition, the Scottish Government launched at the end of 2020 a discretionary fund to plug the gaps that may exist in relation to the various funding streams that were already around. We as a council were allocated £539,000 in December 2020, and we approved a distribution mechanism in February 2021, which is detailed at the appendix, detailing who would be eligible for this discretionary fund. We as a council have been allocated a further £1.254 million in February of this year, and this paper simply requests approval from the Cabinet to continue with the criteria detailed in Appendix A to continue to distribute the extra £1.254 million that has been made available to us, and as such I would be happy to recommend this paper to Cabinet.
Thanks very much for that, Mr. Dawes, much appreciated. I think, again, we very much welcome the additional funding that has come to us, and this is an excellent paper in support of the huge amount of work that has been done to support our local businesses during the pandemic. I know that yourself, all officers in Environment Department, but particularly Michael's team, have done a massive amount of work and put in a huge number of hours to ensure that we reach out to our businesses and support them during what has clearly been an extremely difficult time. So we very much welcome that. I think the work that's been done in conjunction with our business improvement districts, with the Chambers of Commerce, etc., across the area, and directly with the businesses themselves. And from what I've seen in the reports that I've noted, our businesses seem to have been been very welcoming of the support and delighted at the level of support and how much work we have been able to assist them with. So I think all in all, it's a very good news story. We always welcome the additional funding that has come our way, and ensuring that our businesses are given as much assistance as possible to survive during what has been a very difficult time. Happy to open up for any comments. Councillor Bamford.
Thanks, Chair. Phil, can you tell me, you mentioned in paragraph 7, it's top-up funds for those who have already had money. Are there any businesses who have been refused money before, previously, that will be allowed to claim this time, or is this purely top-ups for those who have already had it? And my second question is, do they have to reapply, or do you just automatically award them these funds because they've already proved their eligibility? Thank you.
Okay. To answer the second question first, I think it's prudent that they are required to reapply just to establish that there hasn't been a change of circumstances. I do appreciate there is, to a degree, a burden on a small firm or a self-employed individual needing to apply, but on the other hand, we need to be prudent. It is quite a large sum of money, so hopefully the second time of applying should be easier for a firm than the first time, but just to ensure an appropriate distribution of public funds, we would require them to reapply just to ensure there hasn't been a change in circumstances. In relation to who has been refused or who has found not to be eligible, I don't have that information to hand, but I would be happy for us to undertake a brief assessment and pull some information together in that regard, because I think it would be useful information.
Thank you.
And once I have that, I can share that with you.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Phil, thanks, Councillor. Any other questions or points on that paper? Nope, in that case, I'll be happy then to note the recommendations, approve the proposal that the additional grant received of 1.254 million be used for top-up payments to those eligible businesses that have already received a grant aid, and note that the council staff have administered over 17 million of COVID business support grants since they started in March 2020. We're happy to approve, colleagues. Yeah, thank you. Moving on then, colleagues, item, sorry, was that Danny?
Sorry?
No, I thought you were wanting in there. I thought I just heard somebody shouting. Right. Item 5 on the agenda is the Glasgow City Region City Deal update and the report by the Director of Environment. Colleagues, a huge amount of work has gone into this paper. It's quite a complex paper and a long paper, although I think a very good news story in many respects. And I appreciate the Director and his team have been working around the clock almost in trying to get this paper finalised. I appreciate that it has only come out just in the last few days, and that in itself is testament to a lot of the work that's been going on a number of fronts. On that basis, I hope that Cabinet colleagues would agree that there's not been a huge amount of time to study the paper because it does contain a huge amount of work. And I would ask, in conjunction with the Director that I've spoken to, my recommendation would be that, given the late sending out of the paper, that we delay it until the 3rd of June for that Cabinet, in order to ensure that they can all take sufficient time to read it and acknowledge and comment on the issues that are raised within it. I think that allows us more time to suitably scrutinise the paper and ensure that when the Cabinet takes its decision, that any comments made or any recommendations made can then be forwarded for consideration at the Council meeting on the 30th of June. So I would note that to begin with. I don't know if Mr. Cahill wants to come in on any of that, because as we have seen the paper, I know there's a lot of good stuff in it, but I think just allowing us that additional time to go over the paper would be beneficial. Mr. Cahill.
Thanks very much. Just to confirm that when the agenda went out, I was quite desperate, quite keen to be able to report to this meeting of the Cabinet. However, I've had to do the report myself. It's been really challenging to collect and collate all of that information, as you've explained yourself. It's hugely complex. It involves over £30 million worth of council expenditure. And I think, given the circumstances, I do apologise that I couldn't get the paper out, but I think I really do welcome your recommendation that it be deferred to the next meeting in the Cabinet, which would allow members to scrutinise it and also to read it and digest it and understand it, and it would inform me better actually to hear comments coming back from the Cabinet in a constructive manner in the June meeting once they've got the relevant information. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Cahill. I think, yeah, if colleagues are happy to agree to that, that we take time to consider the report. As I say, I think there is a huge amount of information in it. And when you look at the appendices and you look at all of the information there and the artist's impressions of much of the work that potentially could be carried out, then I think it will be a very good report. But I think it's worthwhile taking that time with your agreement to ensure that we are able to scrutinise it properly. Are we happy to do that, colleagues, and bring it back to the meeting, or defer it to the meeting on the 3rd of June? Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. Much appreciated. Item 6 on the agenda is our roads resurfacing programme, and again, report by the Director of Environment. Again, another good news for us. Gillian, what is you there? Are you coming in to report on this one?
Yes, can do.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, happy to hand over to officers.
Okay, so this is our annual report in terms of the classification of the roads, and obviously to produce the list of proposed resurfacing of roads and footways for the coming year in relation to the £3 million capital funding. We have recognised that whilst the Council's A and B class network is in a relatively good condition, our C class network and our unclassified network still require significant work. So this year we have proposed that the majority of the £3 million allocated for 2021-22 be directed to C and unclassified roads, and that's the list at the back of the report. So unclassified roads are generally residential streets. And as you know, we've got quite a lot of old residential streets, you know, dating from 1910 to 1960. And obviously the most recent ones aren't quite in bad condition. So the works programme is enclosed at Appendix A. In terms of the roads condition indicator that you'll see on paragraphs 4 and 5 with the table, that shows East Renfrewshire's position in terms of A class, B class, C and unclassified roads, and that survey was undertaken in the spring of this year. So the recommendation at the end of the report is simply to ask the Cabinet to approve the road surfacing works programme, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms McCartney. That's much appreciated. Happy to open it up, colleagues, for any comments. I know this is an additional report in our work following on from the additional funding that we put on it, and it's great to note the sustained improvement in general in our roads network over the years and the improvement in our position on that. And I think the last few years where we have put in this additional funding has made a significant difference to that. And of course, this is funding over and above what we would normally spend on our roads and pathways resurfacing. Councillor Bamford.
Thanks, Chair. Gillian, if I could ask you, obviously in paragraph 2 you mentioned about the £15 million capital investment that the administration agreed, and I'm delighted, I think we all are, that it's going to be the residential roads, because I think that's where we do get a lot of issues. We know that last year a lot of this work wasn't carried out, and I can see from my ward anyway, a lot of the works that were proposed last year didn't happen because of COVID. Obviously, understandably, we just couldn't do that work for various reasons. What my question is, that 15 million that administration agreed for 5 years, will that now last longer than 5 years, bearing in mind some of these roads that are in this year's budget should have been last year's? So I'm presuming that we didn't spend the full 3 million last year. So does it mean instead of lasting 5 years, that 15 million will be stretched to last 5.5, maybe even 6 years?
Councillor Bamford, no, not really. To be honest with you, we did have a delay at the beginning of the financial year because of COVID and restrictions on construction work, and also the quarries were closed. However, we did, we did catch up a lot of time just by, there was some, overtime, and we prioritised the resurfacing programme as far as possible. Where we couldn't deliver, where we couldn't, finish the roads, or we didn't get, it was very few that we didn't actually get to be honest with you. But we did invest, in addition to the roads, we did invest in our lighting programme as well. So obviously when we change our lights to the more energy efficient lights, not only do we, provide energy efficient lighting that actually saves the council money, it's, just to continue to roll out the energy efficient lights across the council. So if we didn't spend all the money on the road resurfacing, then we were able to invest it in other areas that would benefit our residents.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lafferty.
Right, I've spoken so little, I've forgotten where I pressed it.
You're on.
Can you
You're
hear
okay.
me?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. That's great. I think it's something we're probably very much aware of after the recent election campaign, when we're out knocking the doors, how important it is to have and the great effect it has on the well-being of residents when the repair works are undertaken on the roads and the footways in their area. I think it's one of the many bon mots from the provost. One that I do recall him saying is that good news has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. And I think there'll be no doubt plenty of members claiming their efforts have led to this superb programme that the council has undertaken for the last, including this year, 4 years, and the impact it's had on our residential areas. I recall the director saying at the time that he wished to do something that would have a strong impact on life in East Renfrewshire rather than just patching up. Mind you, while saying that, I have to be noted there has been, in addition to this, small patching jobs, particularly at Root and Glen Park, fantastic. A big hole that used to flood. My dog's got wee legs. It's good to see that attention has been given over quite a wide spread. I think it's important to recall that while we'd all like to claim individual responsibility for this good outcome, I know that the road sections contain a number of criteria, i.e. the structural condition of the road, the use of the road or footways leading to schools or old folks' homes, and the cost of maintenance for the previous years, the number of complaints received regarding the footway, that's a question that has to be taken with a wee pinch of salt, and the geographical spread to ensure that this investment takes place across the whole of the local authority. Going back to questions, I think Councillor Bamford covered my point, but it's an excellent news story. We ought to be very appreciative of the officers in the Roads and Transportation Service and the Environment Department for the work they've undertaken over the year to ensure an investment that will have, I think, a major impact across the whole authority. Thank you for your indulgence, Leader.
No, thank you, Councillor Lafferty, for those comments. I think, again, across the board, this is a good news story. The attached list highlights the improvements that will be made to a significant number of our roads and pathways across the authority, and that obviously builds on the additional work that has already been done in our general resurfacing works. On that note, if there are no further comments, Danny, yeah, on you go, Councillor Devlin.
Just a point in the resurfacing programme, I mean, I keep repeating myself, which I'm going to say here. The roads programme doesn't take into account the roads that's under the housing revenue account. Now, there's many a road and footpath within the Leven Valley side that's still under the housing revenue account. I'll give you one example. There's a road and a footpath in Calabar Court and Barheads that needs resurfacing. It's in a state of disrepair. It's dangerous. Now, this was a piece of ground that was sold under the Renfrewshire Council days. It was sold to some developer. There was never a bond put in place, blah, blah, blah. The point I'm making here, the housing revenue account has not got the money to resurface roads and footpaths. Surely it should be taken into consideration because of the large amount of finance we've got within the general fund for roads. We can do a lot of these roads within the housing revenue account.
I'm sure officers can come back to you on that. I'll bring in Councillor Lafferty again, certainly.
Sorry, they don't come back to me on it. This has been going on for years. This is something Cabinet and Council need to sort out once and for all, Tony. We've been speaking about this for 15 years. There's got to be some policy put in place that's going to cover the roads that's under the housing revenue account. The housing revenue account can't resurface some. The line of state of disrepair and they're dangerous. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I mean, I think any dangerous roads we can cover, Danny. I'll bring in Mr. Cahill.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's something I've been looking at recently. It's the law's quite clear. I've taken advice from Jerry Mahan on it. You can't use general fund finance to carry out repairs to what are technically housing revenue account roads. It seems as if the only option would be to transfer those roads from the housing revenue account onto the general fund. There are implications in that which we're trying to explore. One of the major implications is that if we take those roads on and put them on the general fund, do they then get included in the annual survey that we were just talking about, that's about the road condition indicator? If indeed those roads are currently excluded, but if by doing that they were included, I can guarantee your roads performance figures will go through the floor. Now, we just need to explore that and work out what the options might be, and then come back to Councillor Devlin and to yourself, Leader. But
Okay,
there are
thanks,
implications.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Cahill. Hold on, Danny. Councillor Lafferty.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I thought there was some recent movement between the housing and roads. I was just going to suggest, more or less along the lines that the Director and the Councillor Buchanan have mentioned, is that we look at, I'm very sympathetic to the problem that Councillor Devlin highlights, but we have to consider it carefully. And today is not the occasion when it's before us, but we sort of come back and look at it in the future to see how we can explore this most effectively. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lafferty.
Sorry.
Okay, Danny, yeah, on you go.
Is that a commitment then from the Environment Department? They'll bring us a paper in the future back to Cabinet, exploring the possibility, obviously giving us options, what we can do and what we can do.
Well, I think what we have to look at is, as the Director has indicated, that we will look at that. Some work has already started on it to look at what the outcomes might be. So I'm sure that will be brought forward at a future date in order for us to understand that process and ensure that we try and deliver as much as we possibly can across the authority, utilising the resources that we have. So yeah, I mean, that will be brought back once we've done some further work on it, but happy to look at it.
No bother.
Okay, any other comments, colleagues? No, in that case, I'll be happy to note the recommendations on the paper and the list of roads that are attached to Appendix A for the Resurfacing Works Programme as detailed. No, thank you, colleagues. Thanks very much for your time this morning. That concludes our business. I don't think there's any other item, nothing else on the agenda. So thanks very much, colleagues, for your time this morning. Much appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Cheers to you too.
Cheers.